In the beginning, we were not taking care of ourselves. It wasn't purposely. It was just kind of like, we have kids.
Circumstance takes over if you don't have purpose. And that's why I think that intention is so important. Set that intention at the very beginning, and then it will seem natural to do that.
Welcome back to Hey There Adulting, where people who can't adult find a diverse, inclusive community to figure life out with. I'm Jeena.
I'm Courtney.
I'm so excited because we have a wonderful guest on our episode today, and it's Amy Gregerson. I've known Amy, I don't know, since I was 15, and Courtney, I feel like you should introduce this
I've
person.
known her for a minute. It's been a while. Every minute of my existence has been known by Amy, my mom. And she's known me every minute of my existence, which is a special relationship.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's so cool because I know when we thought about inviting her, I knew exactly the topic I wanted to talk to her about, which was like having a lot of kids. Like, it's a huge, how can I say this? It's like almost like not a thing anymore. Like, it's we're looked down upon for having so many kids, and I've chosen to have a lot of kids, and I think I would say you would be one of the people who influenced me to have as many kids as I have had, because I remember being in your home and like coming over and hanging out with your daughters and like recognizing like how like at peace I felt in your home, which I know I'm not the only person who would say that. It's like saying like, oh, I felt so at peace at the Gregerson household, but also just recognizing just like, it felt like chaos, but organized chaos.
Yeah.
I don't know how another way to say it.
That's so accurate.
But like, it felt like organized chaos. You knew exactly like where all your kids were. Your kids knew exactly what you expected out of them. I never felt like any of the expectations you had for your kids were so unattainable. But I also just felt like all the love in your home as well, which is something that I wanted for my family.
Well, thank you. First of all, I've never heard that or never even would have made that assumption, but it does make my heart feel good to know that that was your experience with our family. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And as like the child growing up in that home, day in and day out, I think it would be easy. We talked about before we started airing or recording, being a fly on the wall in someone's home. And it could be easy from Gina's perspective to like, I would come, I would visit, I would hang out. That was the impression I got. And as someone who was raised in that home, like that's just the most accurate description that I wasn't expecting either. Yeah. And as the child of that household, I'm like, yeah, I was so deeply loved and we had so much fun. And it was often hectic and it was a really warm environment. Yeah.
No, I don't know. I thought you knew. I feel bad.
No, so thank you.
I thought, because I don't know, you told us early in our marriage, like the whole, hey, make sure you take vacations without your kids. And so there are a lot of things that Drew and I like have implemented for our family and in our marriage that like you've inspired. And so like we now once a year minimum, we take a trip without the kiddos, and it's because of you. In the beginning, we were not taking care of ourselves. As a couple. It wasn't purposely. It was just kind of like, we have kids.
Circumstance takes over if you don't have purpose. And that's why I think that intention is so important. Set that intention at the very beginning, and then it will seem natural to do that. Yeah. But if it hasn't been your intention, to try to bring that in can seem selfish. The key word we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. And it did feel selfish in the beginning. I'm like, our kids are so little. How could we? But then
But you would leave them with me and Blake.
Which that was such a huge factor in why we felt so comfortable, because we had someone that we trusted.
Oh, absolutely.
So much. Because I'm the type of parent, well, you know this. Yeah. I mean, even one of your younger sisters has recognized this.
No babysitter.
Yeah. I'm very particular about my babysitters, to the point where I can name all of our babysitters because we've only had so few. It was very important to me that not only I knew our babysitters really well, but our kids knew them. So that way, when they knew like this babysitter was going to come over and watch us, this babysitter already knows me. This babysitter already knows what I can and can't get away with. This babysitter I already know that I can trust and feel comfortable with. That when mommy and daddy leaves, yes, it's going to suck because we really want mom and dad. But Courtney and Blake, yes, there are great like second best. Like, I don't even feel like it would be second best for our kiddos, because You may feel differently. I do think that our kids see you very close to Drew and I.
Especially having those first two, what you were talking about, when it was like building that habit, was when they were very, very small and we were living in your home. And so it was like, I don't know if they even knew, certainly they knew who their parents were, but I do think it was like this double parent feature that we were there daily and they could come visit us. And
it's great.
Yeah.
Which I gotta tell you guys, like, it wasn't communal living. Like, they had their own apartment.
Oh yeah, we were renting.
They had their own apartment in their basement. So they weren't just like living with us.
Yeah.
But it kind of felt like that because very often my kids would sneak out and I wouldn't know this because either I might have had a baby or been pregnant. I was just like out of it. And they would sneak downstairs and they would come hang out with Courtney and Blake and then they would just mosey back on up. And it felt really good because like you guys know this, I do not trust my kids with anybody, and especially since we adopted, our daughter needed that stability, and so having someone that she knew, hey, they're going to be here, I already know this person, I don't have to fear, I don't have to, because a child who has been through all this trauma need stability so much. And so after we adopted, that feeling that I had of making sure that our kids knew who was going to be around them was just amplified so much more because I knew that Tiger needed that stability. I did not want her to feel like I didn't want...
this topic, folks, can be a whole nother show because whether you have one child or you have 10 children, I hope that these are some things that you have thought about and that you've talked to your spouse about and that you can make some decisions before you even go into the arena of parenthood. Who will watch our kids? Who are we going to live around? Who are we going to have as our support system? I think that's worthy of a whole show.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, for sure.
Having like building your own village, and if you don't have one, like how does that impact
creating it,
being a parent?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, even talking about, I'll segue over here, talking about how many kids you wanted to have. Was that something you knew at a really young age, or is that something that you started talking to your spouse about once y'all got married?
I have a fun story about that, actually. One of the very first times that I was ever around Dave, we were at a young adult function with our church and had gone to a dance, and we were standing in the parking lot afterwards with a group of people. I actually had my eyes on a different person, and we were going around the circle saying how many kids we were going to have, and I can remember that my whole life I'd said 10. So this was a surprise to me that this number came out of my mouth. But I had said I want 10 kids since I could ever remember. And then I said 6 that night, though. They were like, how many would you want to have? And actually Dave, my now husband, he said 6. And I can remember at that exact moment just being like, that's interesting because we're going to actually be together. And then thinking, what? We're not going to be together? I like this other person. Like, what is my brain saying to me? But yeah, so just hearing... not even knowing him and just kind of like not really knowing him, but hearing him say he wanted a large family, that was in my mind, a large family right away, that just made me feel more kin to him. Like just that, I'd even be willing to keep dating him, keep hanging out. If he had said like, I don't want to have any kids, I think I would actually have made a big enough difference that I never would have pursued him.
Yeah. Was it a thing back then? Because I know right now it is very much so people are having less kids. We're having kids later in life. And then when we do choose to have kids, 1 or 2, possibly 3. Because 3 is like the max for most.
Big family.
That's a huge family.
Yeah.
And so was that a thing back when you were dating? People wanting to have bigger families or smaller families?
I honestly can't speak to that as a collective because I always knew I wanted a large family. So I've never really paid attention to what everyone else was going to do. I can't really, I'm trying to remember, like,
like your friends.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, did my friends talk about having a big family? I literally just felt so comfortable with my decision that mothering was going to be a vital part of my existence here on this earth that I've never really cared much about whether my friends were going to have a big or a small family. I've never really cared about whether society thought that was the thing. I wouldn't have moved to China because I would not have let them tell me I could only have 2. That's all I can tell you. Yeah, but like I said, I think that Dave said, oh, I want no, or I want 1. That would have stood out to me enough for me to be like, probably not the right, way to vibe.
And y'all have 7.
Yeah. We have 7.
Yeah.
And 2 that are not with us that we didn't get to actually birth, but I've had 9 pregnancies.
Wow. I don't think I knew that. I knew y'all have 7, and then you have 2 that are not with us right now. Yeah. Wow. Well, and I think it's amazing because one, I actually admire the fact that you're like, I don't even know what other people were thinking. Like, I knew that I wanted a lot of kids, so to heck to if like other people wanted, like, because I know I am very aware of like the fact that I have a lot of kids.
Yeah.
Which I don't think it's a lot of kids.
Yeah,
like,
see, that's same.
I don't feel like it's a lot. Like 5 potentially. I don't know. I feel like we're going back and forth if we're gonna have another. But like if we were to have 6, I think that's a lot. But right now I feel like 5 is not a lot, and I feel like 5 is a good number. Like I'm like, oh, I'm really happy.
I'm with you. I actually struggled right at 5. I mean, look at my numbers. You can see I came from a family of 5, so I do think that may have played into some of my
5 kids. Yeah.
We had 5 children in my family of origin, and what was fun about it is I had one older brother and then four girls. So there was one older brother and 4 sisters, is what kind of people would say. And so I ended up having the exact reverse. So I had 4 girls and then 1 boy. So in my mind, it felt so perfectly aligned, symmetrical with what I grew up with. That was the only time I can honestly say that I was tempted to stop having children based on an external factor. Yeah. And it's because I'm so weird about numbers. So that just felt so like, balanced. Oh, that's so fun. That's so balanced. Like, and then I realized no one's going to actually ever ask you how many children you had in your family of origin. This isn't actually going to be a part of my daily routine. Literally, I had to go through that kind of mental realization to be like, that is not a good reason to decide whether to have another child or not, Amy. So then we decided to have another, and that's actually the one that I lost. So that was my second. I was pregnant with my very first baby, and we lost that baby. That was definitely another whole episode I could do on what it's like to have a miscarriage as your first pregnancy experience. It changed the rest of my entire trajectory as a mother. But it also made me comfortable with the idea that I may never be a mother, which I was very grateful for. Yeah. Having to go through, having known I always wanted this large family, knowing that was just never even a question. I mean, I studied child development even in high school. It's a passion of mine. Then when I actually lost that first baby, it definitely really rocked my world. And it was like, what if I don't get to be this thing that I've always thought I was? Like, this was my main purpose of being on this earth. And it was really beautiful that I struggled. We actually had to use some infertility types of techniques to be able to have Mackenzie. And so having gone through that, waiting to get pregnant, then getting pregnant, and then losing the baby, and then not being able to get pregnant again was a huge part of my experience as a mother. Like, it's why I appreciate motherhood. It's why I can have empathy and appreciate those who are not mothers. I definitely understand, at least in my world, what infertility feels like for that small time. And people would never guess that. Like, if you just looked at my family, you would just never guess it. And so it also taught me never judge, because you have no idea the experiences that someone's going through or has gone through. So that was huge, because I had to go through a whole shift of my identity. I can distinctly remember writing in my journal and thinking, who will I be if I cannot be a mother? And I had to come to an answer, and it's I'll be me. I'll still be me, and I will still be valued, and I will still be worthy, and I will still influence children. And I knew that. I actually started to watch other people's children at that point. So my whole young life here, I graduated top of my class, summa cum laude, 4.0 grade point average. My teachers were dying because they said, what are you going to do? And I'm like, be a mom. They're like, what? You cannot do, like, you were one of our most brilliant, students. I'm like, yeah, exactly why I'm going to go be a mom. Like, my children deserve my brilliance. And I want that to be an active part of this world. Yeah, so that was a huge shift up for me, to have to really think about, I guess I could go use my degree, and I could actually get a job, and I could live like a different kind. But you know what I decided to do? Take kids in. So I started to be a home where people who were working would bring their children to me, and I would watch them. And that's what I did in Ohio the whole time we lived there, and before I ever got pregnant with Mackenzie. So
go ahead.
No, I'm just gonna say it totally breaks the stigma of like, at least for me, where so many people think like these mothers are not educated, or their spouses are the ones that are gone to school, all this stuff, and then the moms are just there taking care. Like, you went to school, had like an awesome GPA that people probably envied, and you had teachers like pretty much probably just begging you, thinking
they were
like,
offering me jobs. Yeah. They're like, oh no, I have 3 people I could tell you right now would hire you. And I was like, I really appreciate that. Like, that's such an honor. I think that's wonderful. It's just not my choice right now.
Wow.
I didn't even have children, and I chose to be a stay-at-home mom.
And that feels like has been so relatable, I think, for me, because how many kids did you have at 31?
3. I had Nicole when I was 30. I had my third child.
Okay.
Wow.
So having
at
3
32,
kids at 31 with this context of having had a window of identity rediscovery has been so, I think, fascinating to now, of your 7 children, as of like 2024, not having had any of them have a child yet. Having been someone who's been partnered for a really long time that could have at any point had a kid so far, it's been always something I felt really safe and relatable talking to my mom about, because she had done some really significant work about who am I outside of motherhood. And so then as I started to embark on that work of like, okay, well, this is, my life's kind of shaking out different than I could have planned. It causes me significant pain. I'm not quite sure like who I am or what I want instead. What am I going to do in the meantime? Like, it was this waiting game for children. And I just feel differently now than I did, 5 years ago, even about it. My mom's been like a sounding board, even though obviously her life by 33 just took a really different turn. That exploration piece not only made her, from my perspective, an incredibly intentional parent, which changed my life. I can't understate how impactful it was that, like, for every child that felt that they were brought into the world, my mom was like, this is the baby that I really adore and hoped and prayed for, and what an absolute gift. And that energy of parenthood permeated, I think, what made our home feel so good and special was like every child was deeply loved and wanted. And also there was space for now her adult children to not need or want that same exact path of fulfillment.
Yeah.
And it's liberating. And like, I think a lot of parents struggle if they're like, I love being a parent. It made me the happiest thing in the whole world. Like, don't you want that to like sneaking into how you raise your kids? And just as that child that hasn't taken that route yet, or who knows what the future holds, it's nice to hold that space. And I think you've walked me through how that preconception, that first conception and then loss, impacted you so much. Yeah.
Yes, I do. I think that that's continued to, it's kind of like people who may choose not to get married. And I just don't have a preconceived view of anyone's life path. And I really believe in individualization. I really believe that every single person has their own way that they're going to show up and have that be fulfilling to them. Mm-hmm. And I'm very grateful for that. I mean, that comes from, we never even introduced me as far as just like, where are you even coming from? And what, I was thinking about that. I'm like, how would I introduce myself on Jeena's and Courtney's podcast? And I laughed because I don't have like this set little 30-second elevator speech. Dave's like, yeah, you should come up with like a little bio. And I'm like,
a little
my bio would be huge because like I have done so many different things in my life and I've loved all of it. But I would literally just have to be thinking, what do they want me to say? So I was actually going to introduce myself as a Pisces that is a rising. I just learned this. I'm a rising Cancer.
I was like, you know this?
I do. I'm a rising Cancer and I'm a moon Scorpio. And you're
a rising Cancer? You're alive.
And a moon Scorpio, you guys. And you have to realize Pisces is water and so is moon Scorpio. So when you talk about intense emotions, girl, you are looking at intense emotion. That is my life. That is
But also so fluid and adaptable.
Yes.
Like a powerful force that is oceans and rivers carving like its way through the earth, but also like the life force of how we all survive. Like water is such a cool element for you.
It's a cool element for me.
Well, Cancers are also very mothering, very caring as well, which makes sense.
Yes.
Why you are who you are and how you've been able to raise so many children, but also not expect, because I'm the same way where I like just being my kid's mom and I love just being there for them. I have no expectation other than them being happy and hopefully finding someone that they care for, that want to spend their life with them. Because I love what I have with Drew and I want them to have that so much. But even if they were to choose not to have that I would never sit there and be like, I can't believe it. Yeah. You didn't choose that. I would be like, okay, this was your path. Like, how can I support you, kind of thing.
Because I really believe in what I hear from you and saying that is because you're fulfilled. I really believe that when you are fulfilled as a person, you don't need external people, even your very own children, to be the ones that fill something up for you. Yes. I've never needed my children to actually fill me up. And I'm so grateful for that. I really don't know whether to bless my mom for that because I kind of feel like maybe she's the one who helped to instill that confidence in myself. My grandma too. We have a very strong lineage of women and then also some beautiful men in our lives. We've all chosen absolutely just, I don't know the words to describe, supportive, loving, strong themselves, and them not needing to be dominant or patriarchal in any way to make them actually have worth. I just am so blessed that I came from parents that had inherent worth, and I married someone who has inherent worth, and I've hopefully been able to instill in my children the idea of inherent worth. That's a huge factor of, I think, my parenting.
And I've heard a lot of parents, because we're in this technology age of like, what's my experience, trying to unpack, maybe I had them really fast and it's like, I had too many, or now here in my middle age, I'm looking back and I maybe would have done some things different. Like there's a little bit more like integrity and honesty, I think, coming in more public spaces about conversations that maybe you would only disclose to like your best friend. Like actually, I made some choices in my early 20s that now are incredibly difficult for me because I needed to find myself or whatever. These are becoming, I think, a little bit more public narratives. And like you saying, I just knew who I was and this is what was good for me is, I think, like a very, then listening to this podcast, the title itself becomes less and less and less relevant. Is something just generically selfish or is it not selfish? Like you're hitting on such an important point of like, it's just your own life. And like, if you're being intentional and thoughtful and not expecting your spouse or your kids to fill your cup and tell you who you are, or if you're enough, like, then that's going to bring so much beauty to the world in its own way, whether it's no children, never partnered, or 12 children, or you're working in kids' lives, which is the route I've currently chosen. Like, there's just all these millions of little ways for that own authentic, I like me and I'm going to follow what feels right inside, which is like a lot of, I'm going to have kids because it just, someone expected it of me. You asked like societal, or I'm going to have kids because I always assumed that of myself. And I haven't paused after each one to take an inventory. I just said 4 kids. I'm a 4-kid person. Like boom, 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 boom. I think it's fascinating. Yeah, it would guide you differently to.
Well, even the fact that you had the majority of your kids after the age of 30.
Yeah.
That's a huge...
all the way till 45.
Yes.
Yeah. Her last baby.
46 is how old I was when I had Grace.
Yeah.
That's a huge... Because I had the majority in my 20s, and your like decision-making, how your body reacts to pregnancy is so different that I think that if I had most of my kids in my 30s, I probably would have had less.
Yeah.
I know I would have had less. I'm glad that we had most of our kids in our 20s, but I also recognize that if I had my kids in my 30s, it would have not only physically be different, but mentally be so different because I had Penguin in my 30s. And I remember having this conversation with Drew. Hey, Drew, if we're going to have this child, if we want to have even more, I need this. I need X, Y, and Z from you. And it was crazy because at that time, I feel like we've been the best financially that we've ever been, that it was never finances that have influenced like our last 2 kids. It was what was happening in our marriage and what was happening in our lives that would influence whether or not we wanted to have another kid. And so for Penguin, I remember just saying, hey, I'm going to need this from you. I need this from you emotionally. I need this from you, like physically. I need you to be more home a little bit more. I need us to be able to like communicate and like not hide from each other as much. I remember talking to you and I'm thinking, man, I would have never had this conversation with you in our 20s, because in our 20s, I don't think I was even thinking about that.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that I needed that. And then as I've gotten older, we've had more kids. I knew exactly what I needed. I would tell him. And like, I am amazed at the fact that you had most of your kids in your 30s, because I also know what comes with that. As you get older, you start knowing yourself better. You start knowing what you need, and you have to unless you're, well, I already know you're not this type of person. Unless you're the type of person that was just like, I'll go without it. I'm not going to say anything. I knew. I know you're not that type of person. You'd be like, oh, I need this from you, Dave. And this is what I need. And this is what we need to do. So that way, when we have this next baby come into our lives, that we're good. So that way I could be a better mom, or we could be the best family that we can be. And I'm amazed at the fact that you had the majority of your children after your 30s. I think that's not only says so much about you, but I also think about how anyone who's thinking about having a family, if they do want to have a large family, that they're not thinking I have to start in my 20s.
It's too late. I've missed it.
It's not too late. It's so not too late. You definitely can have that large family
That's
if you want.
probably what partly takes away that edge of any feeling of like, you're not a grandma yet and you have a how old of a child? Like, I'm just like, no, like they're just still doing their thing, and I may or may not even ever hold that role. It would be a beautiful role for me to hold, but I actually am totally fine with that. That may not be something that I do because I've already grandparented other children as well. You know, I parented other children and now I'm grandparenting other children, and for some reason that just is very fulfilling to me. It doesn't have to be my own. Yeah, no, it's awesome. I love this discussion. It's fun.
What was it like for you then having, well, I have two questions. One was, how do you decide, Jeena's point exactly, in between each child, what was your internal dialogue? What was that like when you would assess your life and say like, I'd like to have another baby? Were your babies unexpected? Were they planned? What was that like for you, child by child by child?
I like grabbed my journal, you guys, from 1989 because that was pre-children. My first child was actually the one that was born in 1990. So, and I found at the front of it this little sheet that's like so old, you guys. It's like withering. This was me before I'd ever had a baby, writing down when I wanted to be pregnant, when I would have the baby, and how old my other children would be. That's how cognitive of like me building a family and understanding that the other children would be affected by a new child coming into a family. That I had this mapped out, and it's more. I only have 3 on here, so Peyton and the rest of you.
Yeah,
wow,
you're glad
good job you showed up. But yeah, I mean, you have to remember.
I made the cut from the beginning.
20s, you guys. I'm not even barely. I got married at barely 21, so I'm very young when I'm making this little list of 3 here. But yes, I was going to get pregnant in December of 1990. And have my first baby in October of 1991. And then I would go on to get pregnant in October of 1993 and have a baby in June of 1994. And then I would get pregnant in January of 1996 and have a baby in October of 1996. The children would be, I'd have no other children, a 2-year-old plus 8 months, and a 5-year-old in 2 months. Like I knew 2.5 years was my goal always. Because why? I told you I studied child development in high school. I also learned about the development of the mother and how healing was so important to a mother's body. So I had already decided pre-anything that it takes a year to actually,
not be fresh postpartum.
Well, a year to birth the baby. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
But then you have a year to actually have the rest of that pregnancy and the growth of that child and your body to go back into a normal state. So I never considered having children that were not at least the 9 months plus 9 months apart before I'd get pregnant. And so that's what set the tone. And if you look at my numbers, I'm right in there with every one of them.
Wow.
And so I had to go back and I actually did a revised plan as of December 29th, 1991. Yeah. Because I've
never heard of this before.
I was actually pretty close. That's what blows me away. Even with losing
I was born for
my first
context.
child.
I'm number 2. Okay, well, let's start at Mackenzie. The oldest was born in December of 1990, so you were a little early.
Yes, because let's see. Yes, she was born in December of 1990. So yes, I was.
You were a little early, and then I was born I was supposed to be conceived the year I was born. I was born in 1993 in May. So it's just, what then accelerated it? So if you, when you first got married, wrote this, and then you ended up like a little bit ahead, even with a loss, was there a conversation?
I probably did this when I was pregnant.
Okay.
So this was probably my first, when I thought I would have, that first baby would have been born.
Oh, okay.
So that actually pushed back things. So this is probably when I went, oh, I'm having a baby. Well, let me write down what I want the rest of my family to look like then. Yeah. And so as a 21, 22, whatever old I was, I'm like, oh, this is how it will look. I just thought that was hilarious. And it's like so weathered and worn. And I was like, oh, I should add the rest of my children on here so they can exist.
That's so cool, though.
I've done the same thing too, and
so have I.
I've been super blessed in this way because you guys have known, like I've had 2 miscarriages, but every single time we've gotten pregnant, I've been able to get pregnant. Or I guess I would say every single time I've tried to get pregnant, we've gotten pregnant.
Okay.
And so then I started writing down all when I would want each kid, because we had this thing where we didn't want anyone to share birthday months.
Me too, and I succeeded.
Yeah.
I succeeded. So the only person who has to share, which I didn't even care, was Drew.
Well, Dave doesn't count. Dave doesn't count. I didn't get to decide how that one worked out. So, but otherwise, I would have changed that too. And plus, you're due in July. She was due in July. She came in May. Early. That kind of threw it off. But so her and Dave they share May, but technically she was due in July, and that would have made everyone have their own.
See, and Penguin, he was due in August, but I had I've only gone over with one of my kids to 42 weeks that I truly did not expect for my 5th kid to come in August when I kept going into like labor around 38, 39 weeks while all the other kiddos, except for one kid. I assumed like Penguin would be a July baby, and I was fine with him sharing with my birthday because I didn't even celebrate my birthday.
Exactly.
Cool, whatever.
Adults,
you take my
kids,
birthday.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's funny because like I did not want to, I didn't want any of my kids to share. So even when we adopted Tiger, her birthday was October. I was like, forget it. Nobody else is October. Tiger's October now. That's her month. And I like that because then that whole month is centered around that child.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's like another way to make...
you asked, what are some ways that you make sure that each child still feels that stuff? Okay, so I'm weird like that. Like that's the way I was doing that, was everyone gets to have their own month. And it was tricky. I had my 1st and my 5th were due the exact same day. December 20th of 1990 and December 20th of 2000 were the exact due dates of Adam and Mackenzie. They were exactly 10 years apart. My first 5.
So did Adam come early?
Adam came early and Mackenzie came late. So yeah, it was very, it's just fun to look back at that little, I'm like, I always feel appreciative to Adam because I'm like, you didn't mess up things. Thank you so much.
November! Wait,
I mean, 5th kid, it could have really messed some stuff up. And I'm like, November, yay.
What else did you do for intentionality? Like, so this is kind of your thought process. My body's healing.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about like economically, like what was your headspace for, I think we can bring another child into the world, yes or no? Like, was that ever a part of the equation, or you just trusted a lot?
We had a quick little tidbit conversation about that because I would have said no so quick, but then I realized, no, I 100% believe that in order to have a child be brought into a world, you should be able to provide socially, economically, spiritually, emotionally, like all the ways. I have a very strong core belief about that. Yeah. So I think that any time that we were considering having another child, I had already gone through, how am I doing emotionally? Could I actually mother another child? How are we doing financially? Could we actually have a space for this child? Would we actually be able to provide for the child? Yeah. Like, can I afford, to feed it or to diaper it or whatever were the considerations? But I didn't actually ever have to sit down and do that because I have like a running thing in my head all the time of like, where am I at? What needs to be looked at more. And I always knew financially like that we could. And that's a thing I'm very grateful that I married to a man that had the same value system of that I could actually choose to stay at home and be a mom. Although I never chose to stay at home and not make income, which is interesting to me. I never even noticed this, but I've always done something that brought, I don't want to say the word work because it's play, but I've always had income producing activities. Income. I still do. I probably have 5 literally generating ways that I'm making money even today, but yet I still tell people I don't work. I'm like, what do you mean? Oh, I have a job? Oh, I guess I do. So Grace was asking me, how many hours do you work, Mom? And I was like, I think 5. Yeah. Okay. I'd be able to say I work 5 hours a week. And she's like, wow. And you make like how much? And then we were like figuring it out. And she's like, you make like half what Dad makes and you're only working 5 hours? I'm like, actually, yes. That is actually the way it shakes out. And so Dave's always been one that said, oh, Amy could out earn me. If we're going to talk about earnings, she should be the one that work, like for sure. But it's just not our value system. It's not where we chose to put that energy. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful that he saw eye to eye with me about that.
And was having a conversation, either or of us want to have kids and would stay home, and either or of us would be really successful providing. If we're going to need to split it, it wasn't like an assumption of, I think he would have been a great stay-at-home dad and you would have killed it in the workplace. Sure.
Yes, like I trust him so much with my children. But that sounds so silly. They're his children, but they're really mine. So yeah, like just even trusting when you're talking about caregivers, he would flip out when people would say, oh, your husband's babysitting for you? He'd be like, babysitting? That's my child. You don't babysit your child. Yeah. He was very adamant from the beginning, like, don't use that kind of language. Like to other people even, he'd be very vocal. And that's don't call me a babysitter. I am a father. I'm choosing to be a father. I'm choosing to be a very intentional, show up, and I'm all in father, and I've been very grateful.
And that's such another element of multiple children. So bringing another child into the world, like, who am I sharing this parenting role 100%.
With? 100%.
And would I have had just the romantic big family vibe? I want what I had, and I want my kids to have each other. If you had a different partner in that, do you feel that you would have just like, okay, I'll make it work, I want a lot of kids? Or it sounds like you're saying who you were married to.
My partner made an essential decision in my ability to have that dream fulfilled, to have a large family. I am so purposeful and mindful of the influence that close people, mothers and fathers, have on children, I would have actually given up my dream to have a large family had I realized that that was something Dave really just could not do. Or if I'd seen him harm them. If I had seen him harm them, first of all, we would be gone. Me and my children would be gone. Not something that my spirit would allow for me to live with. So yes, I was just very grateful that I had a spouse that I felt very comfortable and confident. I asked him that as I was on the way to come do this thing yesterday. I said, how did you decide to have a large family? I was like, did you actually have a part of that? I kind of feel like it was very driven by me, and he was just very willing to say, yeah, I think we could do that. I think he probably did run the numbers more than I did, some things like that, which is why I didn't have to even really think much about that. And yeah, I never remember him saying, no, that's not a good idea. I can remember him saying, that may be a little overwhelming for me. I need to make sure I'm ready. It was actually the third where we had that discussion, because it's where you really feel and jive with, I have one, you have one. We had worked out the system, you guys. Third children, they just blow it all. It just blows up. And I'm just
You're
telling
out of
you,
hands.
I say to people after that, there really is no difference. 3, 5, 6, no difference. 2 to 3, think about it.
Yeah.
Stop and think about it. Really look at where you're at. Decide if that's really the path you want to take. Because for me, that was a pivotal child number.
Yeah. I agree.
Outnumbered. Yeah.
I think I remember talking to, I don't remember if you remember Amy Martin.
Yes.
When I had 2 kids, and she had 4 or 5 at that time, and we would go out and we'd go to IKEA. And I remember her telling her husband, oh my goodness, I feel like Jeena has it so easy.
Yes.
And I remember she's like, I was so jealous of you because you were able to just pick up and do whatever. And I was like, what? I was so hard. Like, it wasn't unbearable hard, but I was like, oh, I felt like it wasn't like as easy as you think it was. She's like, no, you'll see. And then I had my third, and I was like, Amy, I know what you mean now.
How do you even have the car seats in crossing the street?
Yeah. Yeah, it was just so hard.
You don't have a hand anymore for each child.
No.
You don't it's where but to me it's beautiful, because it's the point where you realize control is not actually what parenthood is about.
Exactly.
That was the moment where you realize, no matter how great I am, no matter how much I try to have everything in a row, I'm not going to actually have control, and I don't have the physical ability to control these people. And that was huge. That was beautiful. I hope that everyone comes to that. Another topic for a podcast, is controlling a child even a thing that you would be wanting to do? Hope not.
Because you have to put some trust in your kids.
Absolutely.
True trust of being able to say, hey, we're going to walk across the street. I have to trust Panda to be able to hold his 2 sisters' hands while I hold the other 2 kids' hands. I'm not expecting him to parent our kids, right? Because I would never want that. But I also have to know that, hey, I can trust that he knows how important it is, how this is something a safety that, hey, I need you to hold your sister's hand and let's cross the street and let's go to the other side. You can't control them, because if it's about control, you lose that control so fast. So fast.
We actually never had it.
Yeah.
Just little tip there. You cannot control another individual. So there is no such thing as that. And it's very
and because
going to lead to frustration if you try to do it.
What's our very first episode? Child autonomy. It was do children are they autonomous beings? And this is circling way back to episode number 1, because a small person is easy to feel this sense of control. I can just pick you up.
Yes.
I can lock you in your room. I can put you in timeout. I can hit you. I can do what I need to do. And it feels like I'm controlling you. And then increasing with age, that person's own selfhood becomes increasingly apparent. But it was always there. When they emerged, they were their own selfhood. And
unfortunately, you can have a direct impact on whether that true self gets to stay in that sense of true self. Because if a child doesn't feel safe being that authentic self, they will actually change, and they will actually hide or do whatever they need to do to comply or make it so they're safe. They will. It's a natural instinct to become safe and survive. But yes, what a beautiful thing for a parent to realize really early on, that's not the point is not to control. It's actually more to let that newness and autonomy of that child develop and grow. And it's beautiful. I saw it in mine. We're literally 4 girls in a row, and not a single one of them were alike.
Yeah.
So different. That was just so beautiful for me to see. Yeah.
Such individual beings.
Yep.
I think it's me recognizing that I couldn't control my kids is one of the reasons why I decided that I wasn't going to spank them, because I knew that spanking them was only going to get them to like follow exactly what I say, but not truly understand or believe or agree with me. And so it was like, I'll get them to do what I want them to do if I spank them, but is it truly going to have the effect that I want later on when I'm wanting them to think for themselves? Because I think as a parent, I want my children to be able to make decisions, to be able to freely think, to come up with their own ideas. Then if I'm always spanking them and telling them exactly what to do, that once they get to a point where they do understand that they can think for themselves, and then all of a sudden I'm having to come to the terms of, oh my goodness, they're their own person, because I've been so used to, I'm going to spank them to get them to do what I want them to do. That it's not true control. Yeah. It's not true control because I'm only getting what I want for a short period of time. Eventually, I will lose that control. We could go
so deep so quick there, so we better jump off that subject, because I have so much to say about like the choice to use physical force in any situation, but especially with a parent to a child. Such an unfair place of power struggle and of not really having any kind of ability to speak for yourself as a child. If a parent chooses to use physical force like that, it's a big issue for me. So yeah, I've never actually chosen to spank children, and I can distinctly remember the days we tried to do it thinking, oh, maybe we're wrong. I'm open to always thinking I could be wrong. So there was like this little trial period where my friend had taken a course and we took it together, and it was about holding the rod, sparing the rod, and spoiling the child. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe that's what I've been doing.
You're an open-minded person.
I was very open-minded. I'm very always willing to say I may not know what what else do I not know that I don't know. That's what I know. And so so I tried that, and it did not work for me. It just did not work.
It was like, and it was like maybe a handful of spanks across 2 to 3 kids.
Yeah,
like once or twice in my life, and it was a distinct.
Yeah, and I don't even know that I actually ever spanked you. I think I let Dad do that.
Lucky Dad. He hated it.
So
I just hated it.
I have a very empathetic soul. That's number 5. Strength is empathy, which means whenever I'm in stress, I go to empathy to rule my life. And so me thinking, what would I want my parent to do if they were upset at me? It wasn't hit me. So I just never could actually get into that role, even when I was stressed, because I just inherently felt like, no, I wouldn't want someone to hurt me. I want them to listen to me. I want them to do something to help me, but don't hurt me. So yeah, I just knew that so instinctively that that just wasn't a natural thing for me.
Something Jeena said back to like the number of children, the bodies, when you were talking about having Panda hold hands to walk across the street, me being on the upper end of the family, I'm curious if we could like chat just a little bit about like parentification of the older half of large families.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that too. So I'm glad you circled that.
I was on the older half, so I'm happy to share. I'm happy to hear the thoughts that each of you have on like, if I'm going to have a lot of kids, there's one me and there's one partner. Ideally, so there's a lot of single parents. So there's at least one parent that brought the children into the world or is responsible for them. And so if there's like, more than 2 for your 2 hands, what does that look like as in a dynamic as a household to like co-parent all these different ages, and to not expect your older child to babysit all the time, or to always, make the meals for the younger when you have the baby and the toddler? And how do you survive that?
Well, this is an interesting topic, because your age, you do have a different cultural pressure on you. So I see this whole idea of like, make sure your kids aren't forced to be a parent. That conversation didn't happen in my generation. So we didn't fear that we were making a child actually act like an adult by watching someone while you walked out of the room. Nowadays, it's a thing. Like I hear that. I can hear. That's one of the advantages of having been in the throes of it parent for 3 decades. I've seen some changes, and I've changed myself, but I've loved that. I've loved seeing that different change, but I still have I think that goes back to your core definition of what family is. So I have no guilt nor shame about admitting and even knowing I planned that a family unit, we do all have responsibility for each other. So I inherently believe that when you are a part of my family, you are going to look out for your sister, and you are going to actually help to get the table cleared off, or having jobs. Not only do I think that it's inherent, I think it's imperative. So I believe that a child who doesn't feel needed in a family unit will actually go somewhere else to feel needed. I think that they would literally look outside of your family to find some worth about why they matter and why they have some important stakes for being in that group. So I decided early on to make our family unit be the club. We were the gang, you guys. Like, we were the one to be a part of, and that meant we needed you. And if you didn't do the dishes, like, we didn't go do the dishes around them. We had no dishes. Like, I made sure they knew that if their job wasn't done, then no one did that job. And we would just have to be like, oh, dang, we don't even have the dishes to, like, make. We still do this to this day. So, like, we don't have the dishes to make the meal because so-and-so, I won't say names, didn't actually get to do the dishes today. And that's that person's job. And so I feel that actually created more of a benefit. The idea that, yes, at this moment, while I'm doing school with this group, you are actually responsible for sitting and reading a book to this child, because I am going to be trying to school these two children. And so, because we homeschooled for 20 plus years and still are. That's where I have to say it has to do with your value system. If your value system was to make sure your child never felt that they were like that you were being dependent on them or that they were needed to do a certain thing, I respect that. That's just a different value system.
Yeah.
But I also feel like some of the things, at least like some of the examples that you've given, I don't feel like are what parentify a child. Like, I expect my kids to do chores. I'm gonna let you guys know right now, Panda hates unloading the dishwasher, but guess what? Panda's unloading the dishwasher. Tiger hates vacuuming underneath like the table, right? And she'll vacuum underneath the table. I have chores for them.
Here's a tip for you. Let them do what they love. I did that system of like, everyone's going to learn how to do everything because you should all be great. I feel like that's the same way in school. Like, we've tried so many charts and so many things. And what I learned was, how about we sit down and actually talk to each other? What do you like to do? And I found out that in my little group, some people love to do the bathrooms. Some people actually love to do the kitchen. And when I let them finally decide, where do you like to be in charge? Like, what would you feel good about being clean in our home? What actually is something you like to do? We have inherently found that all the bases were covered. Then we'd have this little few handfuls to take out the trash. No one actually said that one, so we'd just be like, well, you know what? Rotate. That one can rotate.
Yeah.
So I really have changed up in my 30 years of parenting on this whole idea of chores and what does it look like for everyone to still be an active part of the family. When you are working, you have to change out what you're going to do because that child's not there. That's one of the reasons why you have to not have the person unloading the dishes be the one that also works until 9:00 at night. That's the problem right now we were having, so it's like, oh, need to look at this. Even though he loves to do that, this is not working. You're going to need to choose a different job. But yeah, just be open to that. Just be open to that idea.
Be open to it. I will say, I feel like I'm in a weird spot with most of my kids. I would say 3 out of 5 of them are all in this preteen stage. That everything is the worst. Sure. And everything sucks.
Yeah. They haven't found their passion in cleaning toilets yet.
And I know that if I were to ask them, if I were to ask them and they said, hey, I would prefer this, I would be fine with it. I think what I was trying to get at was the fact that a lot of the examples that you gave, I don't feel like they're parentifying the child.
It's healthy.
Like asking a child to do some chores around the house. I do expect if you're gonna live in this house that we all help. Yeah. I wouldn't expect them to clean the whole house. And I'm just sitting there sipping my little tea and just whatever. No, I'm helping too. I'm cleaning around the house. We're all helping. I think I was more. I think maybe when people are talking about parentifying their child, it's like, oh, I need you to wake up in the middle of the night and change the diapers. Yeah. I need you to babysit the kids while I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And this is babysitting the kids not for regularly. This is I'm dependent on you. I cannot do X, Y, and Z if you're not watching your sibling. Yeah. I'm not.
I do hear that, and thank you for clarifying that. I also know that coming from my family of origin, when my parents got divorced, I was 13, and it so happened that my mom did need someone to watch my little sister who was 5 years younger than me. And so that became my job. And I never actually felt that also was her putting off some kind of responsibility onto me that wasn't appropriate. It still felt, because of our family culture of everyone helps each other. We had a meeting. We literally sat down and she said, this is what's happening. I won't be here during these hours. I'm going to need someone to watch Eve. Oh, this person's actually working outside the home. Amy's the only one who's not old enough to drive. Makes sense that she's going to be home. Can you see that this is going to be your responsibility? Are you willing to do that? So yes, maybe I had some choice, but not really if I think about it now. But I said yes to that. And then we all went along our way and we made it. And then, just throw in there, my parents did actually get remarried when I was then a senior in high school. But it gave some really interesting dynamics for me to get to live through what it was like to have a family of origin that had all of us together very close, and then having that separateness and then coming back together again. So
do you feel like because you knew your mom was doing this out of necessity also made a difference?
Absolutely. It wasn't that she was going to go play tennis and then she wanted me. I probably would have said no. I mean, really, I would have. And but it's because she literally needed to go to work, and she would be gone at work. And actually, in our case, she was even gone to another state. So we all managed. As this is not one that you're gonna want to add. Cut this part out. But we actually lived as children alone.
You self-managed.
And we self-managed each other.
Yeah, but I will say too, that was a whole different age. I remember doing that. Okay. My dad.
So I was gonna say it didn't seem so bizarre to me.
No, it's not bizarre. We hear it often. At least I know. At least
and that still happens. Parents are working 2 jobs each, and kids out of necessity these days, which may be a different reason than then, or the same economically. It was the same for your family.
Yes.
Parents were working jobs in or out of the same state, and kids were raising themselves. Latchkey kids are still a thing.
Yeah, it's not weird. I remember my mom had just went back to school, got her nursing degrees. It was like a LPN or C or CNA. And the time difference between when he went to work to when she came home from work, I think it was like a good 3 or 4 hours. And my dad would just say, like, don't open the door, your mom will be home. I remember distinctly there was one time that my mom got lost on the freeway and somehow ended up from like New Jersey all the way to Pennsylvania because there was a detour, and she didn't. Detours were not her thing. She was like I'm going to go the same route every single day person. And so we didn't see, like, the whole night we had no idea where she was. No cell phones back then.
No cell phones.
So we just like stayed at home and we just waited and waited and waited. And eventually my dad came home and we're like, oh, I don't know where mom is. She never came home. And then she somehow, I guess the phone rang. He picked up the phone. She was like, I'm in Pennsylvania. I don't know how to get home.
Wow.
And we were just like stuck in the house by ourselves for hours. And that happened often, like not her getting lost, but us having to be home, and we were just taking care of ourselves for a really long time.
Again, I think it has to do with just the overall stability of the parent and like why they're making the decisions that they're making. Would I have thought that my mom would choose to have another baby at that moment? Like, no.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and I've actually seen other families where that did happen, where their parents like got back together for the night, and the next thing you know, there's another baby coming, and yet they're divorced, and it can get tricky. But yeah, I think that having an interdependent relationship within your family members is okay. It's healthy, in my opinion.
What were some of the things that you feel like you did as a mom to foster that relationship between each child? Because I know that I could probably admit, I feel like I probably might do a little bit more than the average mom, but I always feel like it's not enough.
You could do more.
Yeah. I could do more. And mostly because maybe some of it might be a little bit of guilt, but also some of it, I think the majority of it is actually like hanging out with my kids.
Yeah.
Like I really like hanging out with them. Even the idea of like, oh man, like I was just thinking, oh man, I want to have like a mother-daughter date or mother-son date with some of the kiddos. And I was like thinking about like, I recently had one a couple of months ago with Panda, and we went to go see the movies, and we went to go see like a Marvel movie, and it was so much fun. Getting to see his reaction, because it was his first time seeing a PG-13 movie, and he felt like the boss. He's like, I
can do this now.
Like, oh my sisters can't watch a PG-13 movie.
The oldest.
Only me. I'm not even 13, but mom said, my maturity, I can do it, kind of thing. And he felt so good. And then we went to eat dinner afterwards, and he got to look at the menu, and he always picks off of the menu. He's always been able to be the person to like look at the menu, tell the waiter exactly what he wants. But that day felt a little extra special. And seeing him go through all that, I enjoyed it because I got to have conversations with them that I typically wouldn't have had. And so I guess my question would be, what are some of the things that you feel like you've done? Or maybe what are some of the things that you've done with your kiddos to kind of foster that one-on-one relationship with each of your kids? Because having 7 kids, that's a lot. And in a day and age where I feel like we're so busy, that maybe what's your motivation and what are some of the things that you did? Because I want to hear from someone who's had more kids than I have.
Okay. I think that that's changed as much as our chore chart. So you're constantly, this for me, I was constantly looking for like, oh, we should do Saturday dates with dad, and you get to go to breakfast, and we'll like, okay, it never panned out. I'm not a very consistent. That routine and consistency are like in my bottom 34 strengths. And so even though that would sound like a great idea, I couldn't seem to manage it to make it last. But I think we probably did it enough that they'd be like, yeah, we did that. You know, like that's
Home Depot.
Yeah,
We did do dates with Dad on Saturdays.
That one we did get to be
Waffle
consistent.
House.
Yes,
Yeah.
go ahead. Please let me shine for a minute here.
We definitely did that. And you're saying like the same way that I can remember my 2 times in my life being spanked. I can remember maybe if it was only 5 dates.
Yeah.
And I felt, looking back in my childhood, that it was like the most consistent,
Yes.
reliable thing happening. Was like, my dad takes me on dates on Saturday morning. Like, so from my memory, yes, we would go to Home Depot. And we had those
because I did have that ultimate goal always. I was always thinking, I love that idea of Saturday dates with kids. And that. So I would always keep bringing it up. So every few years even, it'd be like, oh, let's get back to that routine. So I think all of them hit it. Like, I think they at least all got to go. Their first date is with Dad. So that's one thing that we have done with each of our children, is that their first official date when they're 16 gets to be with their dad. And then from there, they can compare whether they think the other people in their lives that they're dating or someone they'd want to spend time with. So that was fun. But individual time, I would say when they were little, bedtime.
Yeah.
But once I got over that third child thing, I couldn't anymore. It was like all day long was enough for my body and my emotional state, and to then try to go do what I was doing, where I do this little individual time with each of them. I literally said to Dave, okay, this is above my capacity. You seem fresher. You get to do bedtime. They haven't seen you all day. You haven't been trying to like school them all day. You haven't. So that just worked out better for us. So I had some guilt. I had some guilt about that always, because the stories I'll talk about mommy tucking a child into bed. And so, yeah, I've had some mom guilt about that. But I also, like you said, know my limitations really well. And I'm not afraid to say this is actually something I'm not going to do as well. But I would still make sure that I showed up. So it'd be more like probably so special that's why they'd remember it. So I would say all of them felt like I tucked them into bed, but that was not the routine. The routine was much more like, okay, I'm done. Like we're finished with dinner. Like,
well, I knew
it's
that.
now you,
and
Dad.
That is how it was. And it was Dad's time. And I've talked about that even on the podcast, that was like our special dad time. And I think it was like, it then feels, and it's still this is like not just bedtime, being one of many children, one-on-one time with any of my parents felt like if I really needed it, I would always have it. Yeah. And in addition to that, it wasn't always guaranteed. Like you could just fall into this like chaos of it. You have to ask for it, and you have to say like, I really need to talk to you, or you have to come home from your date at 16 and like wake them up at midnight and say like, I want to debrief a minute on the bed. And if I had done that, they would hear me out. But it also did feel special. And to this day, it feels special. If I'm ever by myself with either of my parents, it feels novel, because you kind of grow up as like a herd and you're doing herd things. But I think the difference from feeling like I'm just lost in the mix to like I had one-on-one time was I could always ask for it. And even if mom forgot dates and Saturdays didn't happen, if I told my dad I really miss going to Home Depot, can we go out and do that? They'd make it happen. Yes, and it was that intentionality, even if structure's not a forte, even if budget's not going for you, just kind of like hear them out if they request it, or notice, like what you're saying with Panda, like notice maybe some individual time is needed here. Like, do I feel a little disconnected from that child, or have we not had a conversation where I'm seeing them and hearing them one-on-one in a while? Carve out some time then.
I find children are very transparent. So if you're actually just aware of your children, you will see changes in their personality. You'll see that they're disengaging from the family. So as soon as I saw that a child was moving away from the family unit, if they were hanging out at friends' houses more, that was my key to say, oh, have I done something with them lately? Have I actually made sure that they know that...
Are you fighting more with your siblings?
Yes. So whenever I've noticed that those kinds of interactions were changing, that's when I would make a very intentional moment to say, oh, I think I'm going to go shopping with just so-and-so. Oh, I think we're going to go out to eat, or, you know what, let's go do this thing. And sometimes it'd be me and Dave taking that child with us, and other times it'd be maybe just me and that child. But I think awareness is like the best way, and especially with a large family. And if you're not a routine person, rather than trying to force yourself into these patterns that may exhaust you and actually become kind of resentful in your routine, I've always found being with my children was a joy for me.
It's
always.
So much fun.
Like, I love it. I love it. And I love to be around them, but it's because partly I've allowed myself to know when I didn't like when I needed to have some space and I needed to be able to say, no, this is like my time. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with I'm shutting the door now. And unless literally you're bleeding and we'd go to the hospital right now, then don't bother me. Talk to me right now.
I've met women who don't want to hang out with their kids. Not that they don't love them, but I would say maybe don't like them. And like, it's hard because I'm the very much opposite. I like hanging out with them. And I don't feel guilty when I don't hang out with them because I feel like societal pressure, because I really don't care if society thinks that I should. I think society actually makes it where you don't actually have to like hang out with them. Like if you're a good mom, that's good enough and you're providing for them. I generally, when I feel guilty and I'm really busy with my life because we have work and we're adults, right? We have so much going on. Then we have other things that will pull me away from my kids. I feel guilty because I feel like it's like that friend that you like hanging out with.
You miss them.
And you miss them. Yes. And you miss. That's where I feel guilty, because it's like, I want to hang out with them.
Totally get you. That's more my experience too. But I'm just going to just give a little different edge here. I do think that's partly our personality type. So we were talking about me being a Pisces. Well, I also could tell you I'm a type 1. Like, I have high energy. So I can actually handle, just in reality, I can handle a larger crowd. I can handle more people's energy. Chaos. Because I have high energy. If I were not of that type, I think you should consider greatly how having other people's energy around you affects you. And so I am not a believer that there's this cookie cutter idea of, oh, well, if family means this to you, then you should have this many children, or you know. The whole topic was a large family, which is completely subjective. Yeah. If you were grown up as an only child and then you chose to have 2 children, that's doubling the number that you ever had any kind of interaction with. And so that's a large family, right? Mm-hmm. You were asking about, like, when did I know I'd want to have a large family, or what influenced that? One of the influencers was actually that my best friend, or one of my best friends as a child, had 10 children in their family. So believe it or not, my 5 that I grew up in, I always thought I had a small family. And I was always jealous of my friend's big family. So I could distinctly remember thinking, oh, when I have my family, I'll make sure that I actually have a large family. And 5 is not a large family. And that was just my perception because of where I had actually grown up and the people that were around me. So that's such a subjective word, the even word large or a big family, that I just want to give value to just the definition of family, and that it is very subjective.
It's subjective, but also I recognize, like, your friends were the one, like, influenced how large your family was. My own family influenced how big I wanted my family. I was one of 3, right? And I only had my sister, who we were 11 months apart, 11 and a half months apart. Wow. And
Irish twins.
We were Irish twins. And then I had my brother, who were so far apart. When he was going into middle school, I was already going into college. And so I don't think I really got to hang out with my brother in any way. Like, I felt like he was just like, how I would probably assume how it is for Mackenzie and Gracie is how it was for me and my younger brother. Like, we just did not hang out with each other or anything like that. And that was really hard because I don't feel like I really know him. And that's what I think influenced me to have my kids all really close together. Okay. Whenever I think about if we're going to add another child, if I realize there's going to be a huge gap, Drew and I both decided we don't want a huge gap between our kids. We would rather have a big family and then be close together, because I always wanted to foster that relationship where my kids really felt togetherness, to the point where this idea of my kids ganging up on me and making fun of me makes me so happy. Yeah.
Because like, they'll have each other to have as their little cohorts.
I remember when Mom did this.
And they do.
Yes, and I like that idea. It doesn't bother me, because this idea of them being so together and making fun of me, even at my expense, makes me so happy.
It's fun
because
to
I
see
want
them bond together.
Yes. Bonding together is bonding together. However you do it, I understand that sometimes
throwing your mom under the bus can sometimes just be the way it is. So fun. Yeah.
I think it's
so tap after those discussions. I am of worth. I am a good parent. I'm fine. It can be a little daunting.
I don't see. Okay. I mean, I know no matter who it is making fun of you, someone making fun of you is always going to be hurtful. But like, I was not allowed to do that in our own household. My parents were very Caribbean. Respect me. You cannot ever like say anything bad about me because I gave up so much things for you was like a thing. We were not allowed to do that.
You should be grateful you're on this earth and I'm the one who got you here.
Yes,
so
and I'm the one that feels like I'm the one that should be so grateful to even be your mom, that I feel so blessed that like I want my kids to be able to say that. Where at times it has hurt my feelings, where even Panda said something. I was like, I can't believe you said that. That really hurt my feelings. And he was just like, oh, like, and he was saying in a jokeful manner. He did not get in trouble. I was just like, that was really hurtful.
Yeah.
But I also am really happy at the fact that he felt like he could say something like that, because I would rather him be able to feel the confidence to be able to say something like that. And then afterward, he apologized. He was still very respectful. But I guess like how you had your friend who influenced you to have as many kids as you did, I think a lot of people just don't recognize that as people, we're human, right? We're human beings, that a lot of things may influence why we make certain decisions. Yeah. And so to try to understand, hey, I made this decision based on this. You may not agree with it, and you may come to a different decision, even being brought up in the same family. Mm-hmm.
Yes, well, people are just so dynamically different, though. So even within my family structure, like we all had different personalities, and same with my family. Mm-hmm. But I see some families where maybe out of cultural expectations, maybe especially spiritual expectations. I did grow up in a very religious atmosphere where family was central. Mm-hmm. And so the idea that you would choose to say not have a family, that actually was never talked about. That was never actually a choice that you would hear about. Choosing as a woman to have a career and not be a mom, that would not have been presented as like such a thing to weigh
valid.
out. Yeah, just don't weigh that out yet. Now I feel like that's changed. I feel like even within my cultural experience of religion that's changing. But I was just saying that I do think that I'm very blessed that it fit my personality. Because I think I probably would have had the same trajectory thinking I was just doing the right thing, even if it had not felt so joyful to me. And I've seen some of my friends and some others that I am aware of where they were going forward more out of a sense of duty and believing this would be something that I'll figure it out if it doesn't feel so great to me. I'm sure there's something wrong with me. Like if I'm not enjoying this baby, if I'm not enjoying actually staying at home all day long and having this family unit and not having something much outside of that family unit, that they were intrinsically looking inside of them like there was something wrong with that and something that wasn't acceptable. And unfortunately, I've seen people that continue to even have children in that situation, and it does have an impact on your child. When your overall arching feeling is, this isn't really...
it's not my thing.
It's not my thing. It's not
filling
bringing
my
value to me. It's not feeling. It's just not feeling enriching. And actually, it's very depleting. And it feels like it's sucking the very life out of me. And I don't even know who I am anymore. I see that, and I can understand that from a different perspective of every individual is different. And so, I don't know. I wish there was a way for me to really just like wrap my arms around every mom and say, I know that you may have gotten to this space and didn't quite know how you got to this space, but there is somewhat of a responsibility once you've gotten to that space that now you will have to find how to support yourself with where you're at. So you may need to bring in additional people into your life. You may have to have vacations at grandparents' houses. Like there may have to be some adjustments in what your ideal family situation was going to be when you realize that you may actually be in a situation that you cannot continue to support all on your own.
Yeah.
And that's a tough place. That's one of the reasons why I do believe in having a little more space between children, is because remember, I know physically it takes time to recover. Well, I think emotionally it does also. And so you can't actually be in a space of even knowing how will I be as a parent to this family that I now have, if you haven't had time with that family yet. So it's a little tricky. That's a tricky topic that I don't want to step on too much because it's so personal, and because the fact that once you have a child, they're already here. So you don't really get to do the backtrack like, oh, I'd like to spread them apart this much, or I'd like to maybe not have had this many. Like, not really a choice. And yeah, I definitely can tell you back to the choice of like each child we had, they were all wanted. They were all planned for. And the only one that was unexpected was our miracle child, and that was Grace. And that one was because I did not think I could have any more children. I had had the miscarriage before Jacob and then had gone into premenopause. You guys, I was 45. And so I actually believed that I was already past that season, but I'd had a very spiritual experience that I was told I would have another daughter. So my husband and I had gone and taken all the adoption courses and were prepared to actually adopt because it was so strong. And I knew that I had another daughter coming. And so we did that. And then as we went to turn the papers in, we already had taken all the classes. And back then, I don't know how it is now, but it was intense. Like, it's like, are you kidding? I didn't take any of this training to have my other 6 children. Why am I taking like hours and all of these? I'm like, it's good. But it was a little interesting to me. And then we went to go turn the papers in. And I distinctly heard a voice say, don't turn the paper in. And I remember talking to the lady about it. And she said, don't. You're not the first one that's happened to.
Wow.
And then I got pregnant with Grace. So yeah, it's a very interesting journey with all of my children, but particularly being able to have, my last 2 have been very miraculous intervention from, I think, the heavens for me to have. So Jacob came at a very tumultuous time in our family dynamic in the what is that called? Our extended family. And so in some ways I do actually credit the fact that I got pregnant as being something that allowed me to think of something besides the pain that I was going through at the time, and kept me remembering that I needed to be on this earth and I had to nurture this baby I was carrying. That was a very difficult time. And then again, so that was 5 years between him and Adam because of our miscarriage. And then another 5 years before Grace came. And both of those I count as very special gifts to our family.
I really appreciate you even saying or recognizing someone telling you not to turn in your papers, because we talk often about how a lot of people who are in the adoption process will continue trying for a baby, or it's like one of them will pan out and it's like, it's almost like disrespecting that child who's been through so much trauma, who's about to come into your family. When in reality, if you're not ready, no matter how much you may want a child in your home, that if you're not ready to really focus on that child, which it's not like, I feel like what it was for you guys is like that child was not meant to be in your home.
It wasn't meant to be, yeah.
And you were supposed to have that focus on Grace.
Yes.
That like, I hope that other people hear that and just recognize, like, unless you're fully able to not only be child-centered, but recognize that you're not really
trying on biologically anymore.
Yes.
Like, you're adopting exclusively.
You're adopting.
Yeah.
You should be adopting. You
Yeah.
should not be continuing trying. I know for you it was different because you really assumed that
it was past that.
You were past that,
Yeah.
right? But I know there are a lot of people who are a lot younger who are, I'm going to keep trying and I'm going to adopt. That it really you're failing that child who you may be bringing in, who you're adopting, because it's like you're not really focusing.
They're your backup.
Your backup.
Yeah.
No child wants to be a backup.
No.
Like
Yeah.
no child. Like that child should be your number one choice, number one priority. And I'm hoping that people hear that, because that's just so important for people to hear, because I think it's important people to hear. But I just also think that child who may come into your home while you're just like continue trying for a biological child, that they're not feeling like they're the backup, because there are a lot of adoptees who grow up and say, I was a backup. I was
only because I couldn't conceive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I think any decision to have a child come into your home should be purposeful. So whether that's biologically, whether that's adoptive wise, and I'm not necessarily opposed to saying that I want to adopt and I would still try. So I don't find that to be a conflict in me, and I would find room for both of those children, especially if I was still purposely saying that I want to add to my family. So that wouldn't be a conflict for me inside, or if I had said I'd gone ahead. I think it was more just I was willing to know that the message I'd received, I would have another daughter. Then I took that so seriously that I thought, well, if I can't biologically, then I 100% am open to actually taking a child and then from another source, another family source. And so that was where just for me, it was then told, no, actually, you don't think you can get pregnant, but you can. Little Miss, what's the story in the Miss Sarah? So here I am with my little Miss Sarah story. And I mean, I'll tell you that the beautiful thing about having a baby in your 40s, if I'm going to put a plug in for that, it will reset, or at least for me, it reset me. So whereas I was feeling that shift and I was getting tireder and I was just feeling the age, I was starting to feel aging. I literally was reset with that baby's birth and went back into my 20s and 30s for sure. So,
well, I mean, genetically, having each child does reset you, changes your whole body. I think about myself right after I have a baby to where I am at now. There are things that I'm like, I can't believe I was able to do that.
Yes.
I can't believe that my body was able to do that.
Yeah.
Or mentally, and I'm just like, oh, that's just because I just had a baby. There are so many things that I'm able to do because biologically, like your body is just like, I've got to be able to do this. I've got to make it work.
And it actually has hormones that are actually produced for that exact thing. And it's real. That's a real thing. I felt it the most with having that long time between births and then me being older. And it's also a beautiful experience because it's my only child I chose to have at home. So my full home birth experience. I'd always had my children natural, quote unquote, but in a hospital setting and had my person there to support me. But that was my first time to actually be able to say, no, I'm going to choose to go out with a bang. I'm going to do it the way I always wanted to. I'm going to have this baby at home.
In our 40s too. I think that's
beautiful.
Just amazing. Cool. Okay, so very last question, because I know everyone's going to be wondering this.
Okay.
How did you make it financially with so many kids? Because nowadays, I think Drew has talked about this, how if you want to just be middle class with 2 kids, in some states you need to be making over $200K a year. How did you guys make it work? Because you were bringing in an income, you were bringing in money, but you were not working, I would say, full time.
Oh, and my income was never considered as part of how we actually survived. It was fun money, you guys. I'm a one. I got to have fun. I got to be able to know I can go on.
So we weren't buying food with it?
No, we never to this day, have used my money to be able to actually sustain our household, except for those 3 years when Dave early retired and we tried to do the doTERRA team thing and then realized that's not as fun as it looked on paper. And we went back to, you can go ahead and go have your engineering job and do your thing and I'll just continue to have fun. So I think that financially that's a real thing, and it's something that I said before, you cannot just push that aside like somehow that all just magically gets taken care of. I think it's a very real essence to look at. Do you have a place to live? Do you have a place to bring a child, into your home? And can you actually provide for them? And like I said, I don't think it's just physically providing for them or even emotionally. I think socially too. So do you have a way that child's going to be able to be in a group of other children? Like, do you have activities? Maybe it's sports, maybe it's music, something, but you want to be able to have kind of a well-rounded child. And in order to do that, you have opportunities is a big word, right? So how did we do that and how did we make that decision? Well, for one, we chose not to have babies when we first got married. So one of the things I had to agree to, which I did not want to, was that I would wait. So we had an agreement that we would not even think about getting pregnant for the first 2 years of our marriage. And so Dave was 4 years older than me, so that gave him a little maturity and time to already be finishing school and some of those things. We weren't one that believed you have to have everything, all your ducks in a row. You got to have your diploma on the wall. Everything should be. No, we did not feel that. But we definitely felt like you should have a path, and a path that would actually lead to a family that could be supported by whatever means you decided, one parent working, 2 parents working, however that was going to work. And so we had made a joint decision that we would not consider getting pregnant for those first 2 years. And so that's why the pregnancy being lost was also a little disappointing, because I had already waited so and my maternal instinct was definitely there from me being born. I feel like I was constantly babysitting, always wanting to be around children, like the baby whisperer is what they called me, in circles of, community circles. And so that desire to have a child, it did actually kick in. I actually wanted to quit school. I wanted to be like, you know what? I just want to have a baby. And it was Dave. It was actually Dave who actually helped to say, I really honor that. I so love that. It's one of the things I respect about you, but I also respect who you are. And I think it's vital that you finish this journey of wanting to actually get a college degree, because before you met me and before you were thinking that would be, you wanted that. And what if you change your mind and somewhere in the future you go, why didn't I ever finish that? I just don't want you to ever point to me as that reason. And I'm really grateful to him that he had that wisdom and that insight. So I did finish my college degree. And like I said, graduated with very high honors. And it was a joy for me to go through that experience. And at the same time, he was able to keep going with his education. And he then got his master's degree. And so that was all settled before we went into the decision of now, like, let's have a child and enter. So it's kind of one of those things, again, I don't want to sound judging, because sometimes you just don't know that that would be important, or you don't have a husband who's 4 years older than you and a little wiser in that category. And like pretty much puts the reins on and says, hey, you know what? We have a whole lot of life in front of us. How about we put 2 years to just me and you? And then we'll like go from there for the next part. It ended up being 4 for us. And then we were able to go on. But that is partly, it's when we learned some financial responsibility. We luckily had both come from families where we were responsible for our finances as young adults. So I was completely on my own to do my college experience and to pay for that and pay for food and all those things ever since I left home to go to college. So I didn't have a scholarship. I literally paid for it all out of my own pocketbook. And that makes you a little more, at least for me, it made me more conscious of money and how to spend it and how to save it. My husband did have a scholarship, so he at least had some help with his finances in his college education pursuit. But when it came down to it, like, we had to decide about getting his master's and how that would look to be paid for. And we were able to be debt free, both of us, when we ended our college experiences. And so that matters. It matters where you're starting from, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So that we didn't ever come from a behind trying to catch up space. We always came from a very purposeful, we will always give 10% to ourselves, 10% to God, and 80% we will live on. And we've done that from the very first day we've ever been married. And so that has been helpful to be able to have that knowingness that we can't control the financial situation of like the world, but we could at least have some control over our own, what we will do with the money that we have. Okay, now we had a bug that literally, you guys, I had to park on a hill.
Like a Volkswagen bug.
Yeah, Volkswagen bug that didn't go in reverse.
Yeah.
So any place that I parked, I had to park in a position where I could make sure I could pull out, or else I was stuck there the rest of the day. Okay, so I'm not saying we had glamour.
You made it work.
We did not have, like, we make it work. And both of us are luckily also fiscally that way.
Scrappy.
There's always a spender and always a saver. I'm actually the saver. He's the spender. But even within his spending, he's a very fiscally minded spender. Yeah. So that's something I think you should know before you marry someone. But that's something I did know.
Or before, if you already are partnered and it's now just about how many kids and like have watched that dynamic in your partnership.
Yeah.
If this is a really stressful point for you and someone is a super spender and you're always saying like, how are we going to pay the bills? Like, if that's a dynamic you're frequently, like, think about the number of children then. That's a great thing to consider.
Yeah. And talk about how that will change when you do have a child, that you're now dependent on that person, if that's your situation. Or if you choose to go ahead and say, you know what, I think I will keep bringing some income in myself.
Yeah.
I would really like to know that I actually have the ultimate control over whether this child will be fed or have a place to live, or like that may be something that for someone that's very important to them and doesn't feel vulnerable to say someone else is responsible for that. Totally get that. Yeah. So that's financially, I really believe that we just have always started from a good place and we live within our means. I mean, that's the bottom line. We live within our means. And I would be willing to sacrifice something that maybe for some people, like going and getting your nails done, that is okay. Like, I'm all about it. Like, I love self-care. But if I had to choose to do that or let my child do ballet, I would choose ballet.
And not resentfully.
Oh, no.
And that's
choose
the
it
difference.
like openly and want to.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't work for you, like, great thing to think about for a number of kids.
Just marry a guy who's really articulately able to do fine details, because Dave's a great pedicure. What is that?
Pedicure,
manicure.
Oh, yeah. He does my mom's nails.
Yeah. He did these. Like, I should show them off.
He always does.
It's not like I was doing without. I just didn't go into a shop to do it. I just got to sit during date night and he would fix my nails all up. So yeah, and he did that for all of his little girlies too. But that's what came from doing model airplanes as a child. Very good at painting details.
He is.
Oh, engineers, I love them. Yeah, they can do details like no one else. So that's my tip on that, is just, there is some, you do have to be responsible and mature enough to say, well, if we choose to do this, then we may not be able to do this. But like, I wasn't going to not have family vacations, whether I had 1 child or 10 children, like, so a lot of those things, they didn't really vary. Once you had one, I was already sold. Like I was already sold that we were going to have a certain lifestyle that may require us to have or not have. But then there's also things like I remember distinctly when I was getting pregnant with one of my children and going, we won't fit in the car we have. Like that's a real thing. Like you have to have transportation. And when you don't have a child that can drive yet, you're going to need them to all fit in the same car, you guys. So yeah, I think you have to think about things like that. And even just the cost of like car seats and having the real tools to be able to then go forward. But I never found that I was having to decide not to have a child because of finances. I did probably have a little idealistic faith connected to that if I felt intuitively and spiritually and in my own gut that it was time for another child, I somehow knew that it would work out. It will work out. So because I was very purposeful with that whole journey of parenthood, I always felt very confident that if it was feeling like this is something that we are ready to do and we want to do, that it would all work out. The whole package would work out. Yeah. Even when we had multiple children that did not want to room together, and all of a sudden you go, oh, wait, this is not working.
We have 2 bedrooms.
This dynamic is not working. Oh, I had to switch beds around. You've never seen enough
configurations.
Because when I saw this is not working, we'd change it up. We had 3 kids in one room once, and one kid had their own room. Like I would do anything that it took to make it work. That people could feel at peace in their own home. And every child's different. And some of my children couldn't share rooms. It just wasn't in their nature. And yet some of them loved it. The more the merrier. So I'm like, oh, good. Those 3
I got one chance to have my own room, and I'm a more the merrier person.
Yes, she is. Thank
with
goodness.
the siblings that I want to be more the merrier with, which there's different personalities. And I was like, this is like really nice. And then I was often just sitting on my little full bed, and I was like, and a little boring.
And she would end up in the room with her sibling.
Yes.
And so when I realized that, I'm like, okay, no more room by yourself, kiddo. We're going to shift this around. And we had other times where literally a child had their own room, and they would go and pull out the bed under the trundle bed, and I'd wake up in the morning and they were all in the same room. And so I think that you have to just know, again, your children, your family dynamics, but I'm all about being flexible. But that's me again, and that does not true. Some parents, personalities actually, they need to have structure, and they need to know that you're not going to wake up and find children in all sorts of places. Like that would be really disruptive to them and not feel safe to them. And so I really get that a parent is going to be so dynamically different according to their own personal personality, their desires, their dreams, what their definitions of family are. And I just pray that like all families will feel acceptable to their own decisions about what feels right to them. Whether that means you and your spouse and you never have other children, whether that means that you choose to have one child, whether you choose to adopt a child or have the child. Like I really feel passionately that there is no right or wrong, and that is a very personal, individual decision. And I support all of those different ways that looks.
We are going to play a game called Selfish or Self-Care.
I love games. Okay.
And it's going to be rapid fire. This will be interesting because, I don't know. You know what? I'm not even going to talk about it. Selfish or self-care. Okay. We're just going to ask a bunch of questions, and then we'll see. So, going on vacation without your kids.
Self-care.
Self-care.
Spending money on a spa instead of your kids' lunch. I think it's selfish.
Self-care.
Doing an activity by yourself that you know your kids would enjoy. This is hard.
That's hard for me. I think it so depends on the activity. So I'm still going to say self-care.
I'm going to say self-care.
I would say self-care, but I also feel like I would maybe more likely like do the activity later on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe include that one child too. So okay.
Wanting to go to an amusement park while your kids are in school.
Awesome. Do it. Self-care.
Look at you guys.
Hiring a babysitter to have a day off from parenting duties.
Self-care.
100% self-care. Oh,
Definitely.
good.
Go for it.
Refusing to share your food with your kids.
Yay. I'm surprised.
Self-care.
I'm
We all said
surprised that we all said self-care.
Self-care. Which
Okay.
I laugh because I put this question for
controversial.
you,
People-
Courtney, because you despise sharing your food.
Moms give their food to their kid whenever they ask, and I think it's your own food. And if
I probably taught her that. So.
I do that. Actually, I'm a parent, but I don't mind it. It does not bother me at all. If it bothers me,
then you say, I'm still finishing this. Like, you have your bite, or this is mommy's bite. Like,
I share all the time,
next
but
time-
totally out of my choice.
Yes.
And it's okay to
It's
say
not
no.
assumed.
That's all.
Yeah.
And I tell my children it's okay to say no.
self-care, self-care.
not hanging out with the parents of your kids' friends.
Self-care. Maybe you don't like them.
Yeah, I was about to say I'm not into forced relationships. So.
Yeah.
Although I have to say, I usually do really enjoy the parents of my children's friends. So.
Also, well, if your child really vibes with the kid and you don't like the parents, are you limiting because you won't trust the family as much your child's ability to bond with them? Where you'd be like, we don't really like that family just because you don't like personally get along with the parents because you didn't invest time in them. Like,
Good
that
topic
could be
for the next
selfish.
podcast. Let's go.
I don't know. Because
That's a
right
good
now, there's one from one of my kids' friends. I'm not really vibing with them, and I don't know. I'm gonna leave it.
Next
I'm gonna leave it.
podcast
Could be
yeah,
selfish.
it could be.
Okay. Sending the kids to bed early.
Oh gosh.
amazing.
Self-care.
7
It's great for the parents.
your
It's great
bed.
for the kids. It's great all around.
Yeah.
Only buying secondhand clothes for your kids.
Self-care.
Honestly, there's a conversation about like sending your kids
Absolutely.
with like stained clothes. It was still clean, but it was like stained. That's still okay, guys.
Yeah, do
it
what
is
you gotta
totally
do.
fine. Your kids are kids. They don't care. Like as long as
Besides
it's
the fact
clean.
that they're going to grow out of it so fast.
Exactly.
It's like,
Yeah.
do not spend so much money on little Nike shoes when they're going to grow out of them next week. But go ahead.
Okay, buying new clothes for yourself before you buy them for your kids.
And that's not a bad thing. I'm okay with selfish sometimes.
Like selfish in the positive way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still think we all think it's selfish.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm okay with selfish. That's okay.
Okay.
Fine line, you guys, between these two words.
And
but-
there's nuance in there. Yeah. Making your kids order off of the kids menu, not for financial reasons.
I don't even get that how that would be self-care, but
Selfish.
Yeah.
Making your kids order off the kids menu?
oh, you mean like they may not like the food?
Yeah, like if they wanted to order off the big kids menu, I would be like, yes. If it was
Okay,
not
yes.
for
If it
financial
wasn't
reasons,
for financial, I'd change that to selfish. Why would you even have that need to control them?
yeah.
If you have no problem with what they're eating, then let them choose what they're going to eat. Mine's always financial. So that's
You already
It's an
know.
act of self-care and tell them they can only do the kids menu.
yeah.
Because there's times, okay, so you already know that I have my kids order whatever they
Anywhere,
want.
yeah.
I don't care if it's kids menu or whatever. You've seen that bunches of times.
They're like
they
always
want to
getting
eat
catfish and stuff. Yes.
Okay.
it. But I also sometimes think about my kid where there's some of them that will not eat it.
Yeah.
Like Panda just ordered we ordered boba. He hates boba.
Okay.
Right.
He keeps trying it, and I still allowed him to order it, knowing full well he would drink it and be like, I don't like it. And that's exactly what
Okay, so
happened.
self-care, that makes sense.
And so that I personally, because I'm a mom that
Well, I think
have
that
an issue
sounds
with
like
food.
that sounds more like teaching experience, not self-care. So mine would just be more like, is that selfish or is that like a teaching experience? And so I don't think that it's self-care for me to have my child choose anything off a menu.
That's
that
true,
just
that's
doesn't
true.
even relate at all to me to self-care.
Yeah,
True. But I think we're only at
Okay, I get what you're saying though.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think that's where I was kind of going off of.
Okay,
Yeah.
fun. That's a fun thing.
Okay. Oh, not enrolling them in extracurricular activities or sports because it takes too much of your time.
Oh, that's a really good one. I think it's self-care.
I think it's.
You think it's selfish?
Yeah,
What do you think?
Am I the tiebreaker? Not enrolling your child in
'Cause it takes too much
extracurricular
of
activities
your
because it takes too
time.
much of your time.
I think know that about yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that I would, just knowing myself, I would make that decision out of
And is
still
it going to
the
limit
best.
your kid? Yes.
Yeah.
But like, is that maybe an overall win for your household?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
For the
See,
parent
and
to have
I've
a
made
boundary.
that decision before, so that's why I went ahead and put
I'm so
self-care.
different. I would way rather them be able to have it, that even if I know, not that I say I would push myself to go do it, but I would probably find somebody to do it. Like I would
Okay,
pay
true.
somebody.
You would make it work.
I would make it work
On
because
behalf of
I
your
think
kid.
it's not only is it is important for me to have that.
Yeah,
it takes so much
I just
time.
don't agree that selfish would be your motivation behind why you would or wouldn't do that. Again, I think that's more like you looking at the overall topography or whatever they call that and saying, oh, I don't think this would work for me, but I'm going to still let this child have this. And I don't think that that's based out of selfishness.
True.
Okay.
You would just find an alternative.
Yeah. In a way, that's still self-care. That you would know that
But I
you're
would
going to
set
have
a boundary.
someone else do
I
it.
would say, I'm
that's
at
what
my
I say.
capacity.
I'm okay with boundaries. So.
And I would say next year we'll try sports.
Absolutely.
I'm too busy.
Yeah.
No, thank you. I want to be a better mom, a different mom. I'm at capacity.
Yeah, or even letting children take turns. Like this is this child's turn to be able to shine, and you're going to need to wait till the next time. I'm okay with that too.
Okay. Giving your kids nap time so you have time to yourself.
Self-care. Put them in the bed.
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh,
We love downtime.
I
Yes.
wish I'd learned that though. We
Everybody
never
benefits.
Too many kids. That's one thing. Like you have so many kids, it's hard to have nap time. But there's some people who make it work. I just couldn't.
I would actually, I don't know if you remember this, that didn't matter.
You should have quiet time.
I was call it
Yes.
quiet
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
just go to your room. I would put up a couple of coloring books, and you were not allowed to leave a room. I wouldn't lock the door or anything,
No.
but it was like the best.
Yeah.
Again, that's a routine thing, and man, I think it's wonderful. I just never succeeded.
Yeah. That's a nice idea in
It was
your
a
head.
great idea.
Oh, okay. This one's a really good one.
Okay.
Making your kids follow your fad diet, and this is not like a fad diet
Okay, you're
because
talking like gluten-free, vegan.
yes, I mean like not for.
Those aren't fad diets, but
I mean in the fad diets of like because you're losing weight, and so then you're making them.
you're cooking
eat this.
only lean protein and vegetables. I don't. But you're saying then make a separate meal for your child?
That's
Yes,
what I did.
If you're going to be that like stringent about what you are going to eat, then I don't think the whole family should
okay,
have to
Because
do
it's
that.
not to benefit their growing bodies. It's
Right.
to benefit
Okay,
your
okay,
own
okay.
body.
That
Yeah.
convinced me because I was thinking like I just don't. I'm not the person to do a fad diet. So if I was a
Right.
person to do a fad diet like Atkins, like a very specific, I would not include my child.
Exactly.
That would be selfish.
That would be selfish.
But if you've like, I think there are famous. I think there's nothing wrong with this, but I think there are families who go like vegan, like being vegan,
the whole
or
family.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the whole family, and that's because they genuinely feel like
It's
it
a
would
lifestyle.
benefit
we
their
did no
bodies.
sugar, and we did that as a whole family.
Yes.
But it wasn't out of my own desire to be like, oh, we should just. I need to lose weight, or I have this
Yeah.
problem.
Yes.
No, it was actually because my child had an allergy. You know,
Yeah.
so then we all decided to do it. So.
And that, I think that is like I like that, but
Yeah.
I've been on those fad diets. I would not make my kids be
No,
on those fad
definitely
diets.
selfish.
yeah, we agree.
Dropping off your kids at grandparents or family members specifically for a night out, alone time, or a weekend away.
Heck
yeah. We love this.
self-care, man. Y'all aren't saying yours.
Self-care.
Thank you.
Self-care. Alrighty. Frequently choosing what your spouse wants to do over what your kids wants to do. Ooh. This is
Gosh, I
hard.
can't even picture this scenario.
either.
So I'm having a really hard time. Like,
Drew always wants to do what the kids want to do.
I know.
yeah, that's same. I'm like, I can't imagine Dave even trying to be so like, I want to do this though.
Me
ever.
either.
Like, okay, gosh.
But y'all enjoy your kids.
Okay, wait, let me pretend. So if my husband was really wanting to do something and it was even over what, so then what are my choices? Me saying that I would do
you're
that?
frequently opting for like your spouse's or your partner's preferences for spending like a Friday night when your kids would all really prefer something
It just
else.
doesn't match these answers for me.
Okay, I think it's selfish as for both parents to.
Okay,
all,
then yeah, if I have to,
Always.
to like
It's
more
always.
consistently.
okay, so if I have
It
to,
said more frequently.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
you're seeing yourself often do what the parents
I mean, I
only
just
want
don't
to
say it's
do.
selfish because you were saying my spouse was the one doing it.
Yeah.
So I'd be like, what's your problem?
But as
You're
a
being
as a
selfish.
couple, it's
yes,
selfish.
but yes, if I supported it, then I guess I'd be supporting that selfishness.
Yeah.
All right, I got it.
Okay, selfish. Venting to your kids about adult issues, letting them into your personal life.
Selfish.
Very
Selfish.
selfish and very
Selfish.
destructive and not appropriate.
Exactly.
Selfish.
Saving money by making budget cuts on your kids' clothes, activities, lunch, etc.
Self-care.
Self-care.
For the whole family.
For the whole family, but I would also say I personally would make it not only where my kids were making budget cuts, we as adults
Yes.
would also be making
The whole
budget
household.
cuts. The whole household.
You're not
Yes.
just cutting all the kids'
Although
activities.
it is okay for me to go still buy something new, even if my children are all only buying hand-me-downs. Like,
Yes.
it's okay.
Self-care.
Self-care.
Choosing to sleep in instead of hanging out with your kids, doing household chores.
Oh,
Self-care.
self-care. Love it.
Yeah.
Having your children do tasks for you that you can do for yourself.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Is this like running an errand? Because like, it's healthy for your kid to do things that you could do for yourself, like running the household. Like as a parent, about chores and stuff.
Yeah. That's
No, that's not how I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it like where I've seen people say, "Here, rub my feet." 'Cause
Yeah,
I'm-
no.
like,
No.
I
No.
despise despise that.
Selfish.
I think it's very
Okay.
selfish when you, or like say you even want to, okay, I'm going to go even deeper. Like you're sitting on the sofa doing your thing and you want to drink a water and your child walks in and you automatically assume that child should go in and get you something to drink.
Selfish.
Or what if we're both sitting there, but we just think, oh, you're younger. It's easier for you to get up. Like, no, like they may not want to go do that any more than you do. I think a lot about that. Like when I'm asking someone to do something, would I actually want to go and do that myself? Or am I using my parental power to let someone else serve me? No choice in their own, but I'm going to let you serve me. No, I'm actually just using you.
I'm asking you.
What if you had
I'm using my power.
What if you had a household that you like? Because my kids can say no,
Right.
right? And you're like, oh, can you grab
Then
me?
that's different. If they have the choice, then absolutely asking them, I'm okay with that. Demanding
Telling
or
them.
expecting.
Yeah. Okay, I get what you're saying.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I would change it if it was just you want actually want to just
Have
say,
people
hey,
help
would
around.
you do this?
Self-care.
Yeah, absolutely. Be self-care. Let everybody help you. I'm all about it. Like,
Yeah.
But yeah, the idea of like the
Telling
idea
them
of
they have
rub
to.
my feet or go get like
oh,
that
I've
is
seen that, and it just makes me cringe inside. So
Selfish for that one.
selfish. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, I
was
love
it.
that game.
Let's
Yes,
get
that was
going. I'm
it.
like getting good at this thing.
Which is funny because like I know I loved how you're like, well, it's like the other one, it doesn't fit me.
Yeah.
I know.
And
Yeah,
but
it's
it
hard.
also is just like, I mean, people are so, when we were talking about so many of these topics, it's very so much so this or this.
Yeah, it's not
Wow.
nuanced.
It's
And
not
it should
nuanced,
be nuanced.
and it should be nuanced.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that was an amazing conversation. We 100%.
keep going.
Yes, I feel like there are so many topics that we could cover. I like loved everything about this because it's just, I often get the questions on why to have so many kids, but whenever I talk about how I feel like people should have kids based on like what's right for them and not be pressured into having them, it's crazy because people automatically assume that Jean's going to be this person like everyone should have a lot of kids, and I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
But I love hearing from Amy today, your mom. I mean, she's influenced, I'm sure, way more than me. She's influenced both of us. And I think it's just hearing from someone like that. I think maybe hopefully someone can listen to this and not feel guilty about maybe just wanting 0 kids or wanting 1 or wanting the 7 or 10, that they're making that decision based on their needs and what's right for them. But it was just amazing to have this conversation with you guys today.
Yeah, thanks for your time. This was so rewarding. I felt emotional multiple times throughout where it was like, oh, I wish I could dive so much deeper because you have so infrequent opportunities to connect with someone like a parent in a podcast type format. Like tell me about or learning things I didn't know. So thanks for being willing to be here. It's a vulnerable topic. Like how many kids and why? So thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I have loved it. There was a little trepidation when I started to say, what's the topic?
Yeah.
I was willing to say yes because it's my daughter asking me. And then I'm like, what did I say yes to? So it was a joy. This was truly joyful. Thank you for letting me talk about something that is a joyful topic for me. And family is a joyful topic for me.